Virginia City by day, big tourist attraction. Everybody wants to come here and see this place. It's a great town. It's a big tourist trap. Everybody wants to come here. It used to be that this town never shut. All these places were open 24 hours a day. Now there's only one saloon that's open 24 hours a day. I haven't been in the Silver Queen Hotel since Jan and I did our first wired camera surveillance hunt in July of 2010. Jan's not with me on this trip. I had business in Silver Spring, so I thought I'd make this my home base. I did have a hunt partner from Reno meeting me here. Silver Queen Hotel used to be Molinelli's Hotel, first built in 1876, 2 months after Custer's last stand. That's my room, was right there. I would go inside and film inside, but I'm going to have to use old stock footage because these people don't open their doors until 11. The Nevada State Journal of August 19, 1876 announced the soon-to-be opening of the Molinelli Hotel, which is now the Silver Queen. The announced opening is sandwiched right next to an article about General Sheridan requesting from General Sherman funds and marching orders to go to the Little Bighorn for body recovery. This was just 2 months after Custer's last stand. Outside of Gettysburg, this is probably the oldest hotel that we have done a hunt in. And on TripAdvisor, I read about people complaining that there's no central air, there's no telephone. Yeah, I wonder why. Behind the Silver Queen is the Miners Union Hall, Piper's Opera House, and the road leading down to Highway 79, which is the 6 Mile Canyon out of here. Here's the back of the Silver Queen, going in the rear entrance. That's usually where you take your luggage in. And right next to it, that is the manager-owner's home, office, separate building. Keep that in mind. We will be back to it shortly. Going in the front entrance, this is daylight, broad spectrum. It's always dark in this hotel. My buddy Steve counted 28 steps to haul the equipment up. Wow. It's going down the front street. Wow. Look at that. Look at that stairway. Man, is that sharp. Here we are, room 12, Silver Queen Hotel. This is the room that was next to us the last time that we were here in 2010. It's a very nice room. It's very pretty on the inside. I met up with Steve and we set about to try to figure out how many other people were staying in the hotel tonight. So we know there's someone in there.
There's someone down, the light's on in 7. I checked, it was on a little bit earlier, so the light's off now.
Nobody's upstairs then, right?
I haven't been upstairs.
Oh, let's go up and take a look.
Just like coming in, there are also 28 steps leading to the upstairs.
You want me to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. He's younger, less likely to fall on me. The really amazing thing as you navigate these stairs is that you're walking stairs that people walked on while they discussed the Battle of the Little Bighorn. There's no getting around it. That's just plain cool.
Woman cave.
I missed capturing it on camera, but there was a sign on the door that said Woman Cave. It's the laundry room. It's where they do the laundry at. It's always locked. Nobody's on the premises at night, but it was directly above Steve's room, and he heard walking above.
25 has a light on. 25 has a light on.
Yep, that's a light on in room 25. That means there are 2 rooms occupied other than the 2 that we have, so there are 4 rooms occupied in this hotel tonight.
Wow, look at that transom. Those are big transoms. So these are big rooms down here also. 18 and 19, yeah. I had argued with the woman that booked my reservations that I thought that room 18 and 19 were over the manager's office, and she assured me that was not the case. She kept telling me that from those rooms you can see the mountains, and I thought she was talking about the mountains behind the hotel, but she's actually talking about the ones across the valley. And hallways are so narrow. Like Steve can barely make it through them.
Room 18 is actually directly over my booked room, room 12, and next time I think I'll take a shot at that one.
Careful going down these stairs.
Yeah, I know.
Apparently, back in the olden days, people were short.
Yeah, all of the older hotels are like that. This is wild.
Does this place have a basement?
I don't know. Imagine it does. Yeah, you do. You got a little door there. Wonder what the hell that is. I'm filming normal time in here. Got plenty of light.
It's gotta be just storage.
I don't know. Can you? It's not locked up, right? Did they nail it shut?
I don't know. Opens out.
Oh, it's got a key. It's got a keyhole there.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the Underground Railroad. Well, you do have you have a shower there.
Yeah, I have a bigger one in my RV.
This is what room number 2.
I wonder if there's any rhyme or reason to it.
What Steve was saying that had no rhyme or reason was he showed me that the door to his room, room 2, had been kicked open and the lock had been replaced, but it wasn't kicked open from the outside in. It was kicked open from the inside out when all somebody had to do was to turn the knob to get out. I headed to room 12 to set up the equipment before it gets too late so that we could go out to dinner. See if we can conjure something up. At just before 8 p.m., the surveillance is ready to go. I put 2 REM pods in the room on alternate walls, and I put 4 cell sensors in a cross-section across from each other. Other equipment, K2s, GoPro, things like that are out, but not turned on. All right, the room is set up. There was an apparition I was seen sitting in a barber chair by the woman that manages the place. She already told me that. At 8:10, there was a fairly loud bump in the room or on the door. I have no idea what that was. Amplified here just a little. At 8:50, another knock, amplified just a little. Again, the fan is not on. Doesn't sound like the heat register. Usually with the register, you get several small bumps in a row. After a pizza dinner, Steve and I came back to the hotel. I told him we need to go to my room and check for activity. Remember those 28 steps? About 30 to 35 seconds to the room. "32 seconds. The activity had started at the time that I mentioned to him that we needed to go to the room and check. There you go, buddy. Hey, how are you? Huh? How are you? That's activity. What are you guys doing? Like those, cell sensors. Let's take you out.
Come down and say hi to me. I got my room's open. I'll talk to you.
On the low spec. Looks like it's hanging around here on this part of the wall. And I would say, sometimes it's suspect that it could be filtering up from underneath, but they're closed on there. Okay. All right. Is that you? Picking up the camera, maybe. It wasn't doing that when I turned it on, though. Alright, I'm gonna move you, alright? Let's move you over here. Not the camera. Cell phone.
Well, I thought I heard voices when you were playing with that. I wasn't really fancy anything. Anyway, I'm going to go down to my room and see if I got anything going on.
Alright.
And maybe I'll give my wife a call. Yep.
When you're done, you want to come hang out, come back if you want.
I might just put my feet up and read for a little bit. And
Okay.
maybe just fall asleep and wake up in time to roam around a little bit later.
We're going to do a little filming.
Those are going off real steady.
Here's where Steve asks the all-too-important question. Now, Steve has a physics degree and has testified in court many times as an expert witness in his last profession.
Okay, now here's the question.
I already know what he's going to ask. Why is it selective? Why are some going off and not the others?
How come the two on the ends are going off, but the one in the middle is not?
Same thing I always ask myself.
Good question. And this one's not, that one's more active than this one is.
The last time Jan and I were here, we captured the same effect. In July of 2010, we did our first wired camera surveillance-based DVR hunt here at the Silver Queen. The alleged haunted room, room 11, had already been chosen for the night by someone else, so we took room 13, which is right next door to it. 13 is numbered out of sequence and is between rooms 11 and 12, which tells me that at one time room 13 was part of one of these other two rooms and then was sequestered so to provide more occupancy for the hotel. Prior to this, we had done a wireless camera surveillance hunt at the Vendome trying to capture my cowboy, and we quickly discarded the idea of using wireless cameras as being non-reliable. This was our first hunt where we actually picked up some metered activity, something we could say, hey, we caught something. We were so impressed with it that I used it as the moniker for our site after that. We were not really certain about staying in a haunted hotel overnight, so we had double booked. Reviewing the surveillance captures later showed that at one point the cell sensor was overwhelmed with such a strong reading that it just froze in place. The light just stuck on. Now, with over 200 surveillance hunts in over 200 different hotels, it's still the first and last time that we have ever recorded that. Looking at the surveillance counter at the top, you can see that the unit is still recording. This is not a frozen pic. That cell sensor would remain stuck solid for 31 seconds. I have no idea what could cause that. Our other big capture was this guy, another guest, who came down the hallway and tried messing with one of my cameras. I went outside and confronted him. The next morning, the Story County deputy sheriffs were going hotel to hotel looking for this individual because it turned out that he was an armed robber. When the surveillance was single framed, the still pics came out pretty good, at least enough for a capture. Which illustrates the point, always be aware of your surroundings in these old hotels. I also did a TripAdvisor review detailing the activity we captured, which was rejected in less than a day. TripAdvisor said they would not be a forum for ethical or religious opinions. I'm not certain if there is a cell sensor religion, but apparently there's one out there somewhere. In case you've never seen a rejection letter from TripAdvisor, that's what one looks like. Back 10 years ago, saying that a hotel was haunted was considered to be a detractor. But now, people that own those hotels know that it doesn't detract from people wanting to stay there. It actually attracts the curious and is a big money booster. Now, back in room 12, I'm trying to figure out what set those cell sensors off. I start by analyzing it with a smog detector.
That's got to be internet. I don't know what else it could be. Coming right up through the floor. I think that I am probably directly over the saloon right here. The
smog detector can only detect electromagnetic fields. It does not have a crystal and cannot isolate particular channels like a ghost box does. The only thing this showed is that I have internet, which I already knew. The cell sensors will not react to internet. Now that I've determined where the internet is coming in at, it's time to take a look at the cell sensors themselves to see what they can and cannot pick up. Before going further in this video, it would be necessary to show what the cell sensor unit is capable and not capable of. I have brought along 3 components that we're going to use to test it with. The first is a standard hairdryer. We use a hairdryer because the motor inside of it is unshielded. It produces a large amount of EMF. Second is going to be a handheld radio device. With this, we're going to test radio frequency response. And third is going to be a microwave oven. Yes, we're actually going to put one of the units inside of an oven and nuke it to see what it does. If you look at the unit, all cell sensors are designed the same. They all look like this. They all say cell sensor on the bottom. I always put a label on mine identifying how loud the chirper is because they vary due to production. They all have a coil, a pickup coil, which comes out separately and attaches to the inside of the unit here through a plug. You have to have that on. Without that, you won't pick anything up. Now, that's, I say, they're all made the same way unless they've been modified. If you are buying equipment that's been modified by some kind of ghost group, a lot of times they'll move the coil to the inside, claiming that that's easier to carry around. You don't have to put up with it. And they do other things to them also. I would suggest that you not buy modified equipment from anywhere at any time. There's a reason that it's there. The cell sensor probe is on the outside, possibly so that it won't pick up its own internal mechanism as it's activated. When it's outside, it's definitely not going to pick it up. I just buy it. Leave it the way that it is. As far as the unit itself, on the side, there's a switch here. I'm pointing to it. I'm not going to turn around. I'm just showing it to you. It's on the right-hand side. And it has, on the lower position, is what they call N for normal. I'm not certain exactly what that refers to, because the high position, what they call H, is actually high sensitivity. And that's the one that I always leave it on, unless the meter appears to be overloaded. Then I'll move it back down to the normal. Now, that's for anything that is picking up both graphs here. You'll see that there are two different types of graphs on the front. The bottom level down here, which is in green, is for milligauss. And that's your power ELF, or extremely low frequency hertz electrical current, which is put out by our wall sockets. That's wall plugs. That's basically what it's used to measure. And it runs from 1 milligauss to 5 milligauss. That is the lower scale. You'll find that because laws in a lot of countries regulates how high the EMF can be coming out of a wall socket, they'll have it set so that it will beep at a particular time. This one here will kick on right about 3 milligauss is where you'll start getting a reading. 2.5 to 3 milligauss, somewhere in there, and then it will pick up from there. If it gets up to where it's beating complete all the time, I raise it, or rather I drop it down to the end setting so that it will drop it back down. And then you have to multiply it by 10, is that now you have 10 to 50 milligauss, because it's raising what it will collect, and it's reducing the sensitivity. Now, the upper scale is for radio frequency. And basically it's used to measure the power density emitted by your mobile phone. That was what these were designed for, to show people how much they're cooking their brains when they put their mobile phone against your head and talk through it. And it's measured in milliwatts per square centimeter. It's not designed to pick up RF radio stations or any kind of other mobile phone base, but it will pick up any mobile phone, and it will basically pick up any kind of RF that's going through the room, although it varies on the strength of the signal that it's picking up, and it also varies according to how big items and mass there are in a room, because RF reflects and bounces off them quite handily. On the front of the unit is the on-off switch, and as you push it, you'll see that it's going to activate here, and it's going to beep, and it's going to show a red flash a bunch of times to let you know that the battery's working and that the unit is working. And then there's a red light right here, which is going to stay on the entire time that it's on. When you walk in the room, you can look, especially in the dark, and you can see that red light. If it's not on, then the battery has probably run down, or something has tampered with it. That's what it does. And I'm moving the probe out of the way here because it's actually picking up the wall socket behind. There we go. Now it's off, and that's what you want to do. You want to set the probe somewhere in the room where it's not going to pick up any of the power ELF strips or anything going along, or any of the wall plugs. You want it to be neutral, as far down as it can get. And then when it goes off, you'll know that you've got something. I would highly recommend that you buy these units. We use them all the time. A lot of times they don't pick anything up. When they do, get your other equipment out and check it against it, REM pods, whatever, and find out if there's really something there. This would be your first indicator. As I move this hairdryer away from that probe, you can see how far I move it before the field actually drops off. So we're looking at a distance right there of maybe 18 inches. That means, and see, it's just barely chirping right there. That means that whatever was in the room there was forming a bubble around these units. If it was electromagnetic frequency, that was a bubble that was 18 inches in diameter, and there was nothing in the room that could do that. Now I'm going to change the unit to the normal setting, and we'll see how much that hairdryer can actually put out on the 10 to 50 scale. And there you go. On the normal setting, it still pigs out the unit. It's all the way now up to 50 milligauss. That's really considerable. Now let's see how long it takes it to fall off on the normal setting. maybe a little more than half the distance, and we're back down to normal on the normal setting. So we're back down to around right here, around 10 milligauss, which is a little higher than what the high setting pegs out at. All right, so I've turned the setting on the unit back to the high or most sensitive position, and now we're going to test radio frequency. Now, these were designed to pick up radio frequency that your cell phone puts out, so that you know that you're not frying your brain and you know to stay away from it, but we'll also pick up other radio frequency. As far as the radio frequency wave is concerned, how long it takes for that wave to drop off. And this is a ham radio. This power output is regulated by the FCC. And as I push the button, we're going to see that it will pick up the radio frequency. So here we go. All right, so here's the probe and the radio. I'm going to kick it off. Okay, and now I'm going to move it away. And it's actually falling off faster than the hairdryer did. It is affected by mass and objects in the room, as the radio frequency has a tendency to bounce off of them. I've now moved it down to the normal setting and barely picking it up at all. We know that it wasn't the internet going through the room because you saw me using the smog detector, and that's what that device is designed to do, is to try to find hidden devices that might be in the room, such as cameras or microphones, something of that nature, and it will pick up the internet. You heard it clicking as it went along, and yet these units were not going off. So if it was picking up radio frequency, it wasn't from the internet. And remember, it only picks up transmittable radio frequency. In other words, if you walked into the room carrying a radio and listening to it, it wouldn't do anything. It would have to have been something down in the bar downstairs that was actually transmitting, that would be able to permeate the walls and would be able to affect both units all the way across the room. So we have three things to look at that could be the possibility of doing this. Since the units that we're activating were across the room from each other, either it's whatever the field is forming a straight line from unit to unit. It is two different fields that are enveloping first one unit and then the other in unison, or it is something that's moving back and forth between the units so fast that these units do not have time to drop off, so they don't record it. There is one idea left that is a possibility, and we're going to find out if that works. So we've seen what happens when our cell sensor unit comes into contact with an unshielded electric motor, an EMF source, and then we also saw how it handled when it was confronted with radio frequency. Now we're going to do our last test or demonstration. We're going to see how it handles microwave. In order to do that, we're going to nuke a unit. You heard me right. I'm going to put the probe of one of the units inside of a microwave, and we're going to turn it on and see what source of energy it generates. Now, out of an abundance of caution, that's a term that's used a lot today, I have got rid of my t-shirt and my shorts, even though it's still 90 degrees outside and it's hotter than hell in here. I'm wearing gloves. I have my safety glasses on in case something happens during this experiment. I'm not worried about the microwave. What I am worried about is that the cell sensor unit itself might catch on fire or might blow apart. I don't really know what it's going to do. Before everybody gets freaked out, I want to say that I just bought this microwave. It's not one of my wife's. I just bought it at a secondhand store for $15. I brought it home, tested it, I melted a candle, it still works. It's not as powerful as the ones that I've got in the house, but it's good enough to do this test with. Typical microwave. The inside of it, the plate's there, but it's not going to go around. That's where we're going to be setting the probe on, and we're basically going to put it on its highest setting, and we're going to let it run for 3 to 5 seconds. Just enough so that it can determine what kind of a reading we're getting on the cell sensor itself from that probe being nuked. For the purpose of this test, the probe is going to be inside of the oven. The unit itself, the cell sensor, is set on the normal position, or least sensitive setting. It's going to be setting on top here. And I'm going to run this oven on high microwave for 5 to 8 seconds. I don't want to go over that for safety concerns, and we're going to find out if this probe picks up so much energy that the light that's on top here seems to hold steady. That there's so much energy going into it that it doesn't have time for it to cycle and drop back down. And we're going to see the same effect that we captured in room 13 at the Silver Queen in 2010. As you can see right here, I have drilled a hole through the back panel of the microwave, which is just sheet metal. The actual emitters are on the sides. and it will be just large enough to fit the probe connection in there, so that we can leave the probe inside and we can run the rest of the connection out to the cell sensor, which I'm going to put on top. I have used electrical tape to put a buildup of tape around here, insulating tape, because where it comes into contact with this metal surface right here, I'm afraid it's going to burn right through that lead. So we're going to try to build it up a little bit. We're going to stick that right in that hole there to give us a little bit of time. Time is of the essence here. We may get away with 3 to 5 seconds, but we're certainly not going to get along with more than that. Now the probe is running up here, and that's where we're going to actually plug the unit in. You can see the where we're sticking the probe at right here. We want it to sit nice and flat. Okay, that's going to be just like that. This turnstile is not going to move. It can't, because it doesn't have that tripod thing inside of it. And we're going to hook up the cell sensor right now. There's our setup right there. Shut the door. And I think that for doing this experiment, in order so that we can see how bright the cell sensor light is going to get once this thing is touched off, I'm going to turn off the lights in the garage. All right, we need to turn the unit on. Remember, it's not on until you see that red light there. Okay, so now it's on. Probe's inside. We're going to kick this off and we're going to see what happens, and I'm going to give it 3 seconds here. Now see that? Solid red light. That's a solid red light, just like we picked up at the Silver Queen in 2010. That's the only thing that can do that. The meteor is picking up so much EMF that it doesn't have time to cycle and drop down between the light settings. And that's exactly what we picked up on surveillance at the Silver Queen in 2010 after we left the room. So the question is this. Now, I'm not saying that this is definitely what caused it. I'm saying that this is one thing that could have caused it. And if it is what caused it, how did an intense microwave field free floating through the hotel get into a hotel that was built in 1876? As paranormal investigators, mostly what we try to capture lies between infrared and radio wave. Most of the equipment is designed for those areas. Infrared is what we use on our camcorders and our surveillance system to try to pick up visual captures, and it has shown some merit. Radio is where sounds are broadcast from, and it shows a lot of merit. A lot of sounds are picked up on location, such as doors slamming, people walking when there's nobody there, things falling when nothing actually fell, the sound of something walking in the attic when there's nobody up there, all broadcast from the spectrum from which we receive sound from. Between infrared and radio wave is microwaves. It is my theory that apparitions, what you guys call ghosts, is nothing more than a microwave projection that's being sent out of that particular bandwidth. The question is, who or what is sending it? And as the projection presents itself as a three-dimensional hologram, is there something inside of it that we can't see? Lucky for me, I didn't have to repeat this test. I'd end up going through these cell sensors pretty quick. Not only did we get some divots here in the line where it arced across to the line here and tried to burn it out, but the unit itself is now toast. Does nothing. It burned the electronic circuitry out, just in that 3 or 5 second burst, but luckily it didn't blow up, which is what I was concerned about. Here's the disclaimer again, folks. Don't try this at home. At 11 minutes past midnight on that first night, both cell sensors started going off again on each end of the room. Enough to wake me up. I don't know why. I guess because I was sleeping too hard, and they can't sleep at all, so what the hell, let's wake him up. Both again racking out at about 5 milligauss or higher on the high setting. I messed with them for a while until I got tired, and eventually I went over and set them on the normal setting so that whatever it is that's generating this EMF or microwave field has to generate a higher field in order to be detected, or let me sleep. Man, you're really flipping that off. You got it pegged out. Nothing there, though. Over there also. Again, both of you doing it. And you're about out of steam over here.
It's the same thing we went through when Jan and I stayed here. You kind of come and you go. Intense field of some kind in here, huh? Well, I got you on the high speed.
When cell sensor detectors are going off like this in the high setting, the way to get around it is to change it to the normal setting so that now it will only pick up from 10 to 50 milligauss.
Oh, I raised you up.
Even though they're now raised to normal, I can tell that response is still around 10 to 20 milligauss, so they might still go off.
But the other one over here hasn't gone off at all.
Well, problem solved with the cell sensors by setting them to a higher setting. Now it's time for the REM pod to get involved. I've seen this before. In fact, just a month ago at the Vendome, if you turn off one piece of equipment, it'll go after another one.
Hey. Hey, how you doing? Good morning. Time is it? Seems like it's pretty early here. The REM pod goes off. So, you finally found the REM pod. Nice of you to stop by.
No rest on this investigation, that's for sure. I turned the two cell sensors to the normal setting, and now the one that has not been adjusted goes off.
There you go. What you got going on there, huh? You want to find that detector? It looks like you finally found the detector up there. That's going off, but how come the REM pod's not going off?
And therein lies a very important question.
You like it, huh?
Both the cell sensor and REM pod can detect EMF, and they're right next to each other. One's going off, but the other one is not.
There we go. We got enough light in the room now. We went back to ambient lighting. So we got the cell sensors going off. So you know from the last time we were here, you know how to manipulate that. Oh, look. This one's going off over here, too. Okay, so again, once again, we have some kind of localized field in the room here, and I'm not certain what it is.
Both K2 units sitting next to the cell sensor are not activating at all.
But the one over here, now this one's not going off.
So if this is haunted activity, what would be causing it? The Silver Queen has a well-seasoned story about one of the earlier inhabitants, Rosie the prostitute, who killed herself while sitting in one of the bathtubs of the hotel, just like the tub here in my room, which is identical to the tub in room 13, which we stayed in 2010, and also identical to that of room 11, where she committed suicide, supposedly. Zach Bagans, yeah, you remember him, went so far to actually sit in the tub in room 11, proclaimed this is the tub where Rosie the prostitute committed suicide after falling in love with a married man, and showed how she probably slashed her wrists and let the blood drain into the water. Unfortunately, according to the manager that I spoke with in 2010, the tubs weren't installed until around 1969, so nice try, Zach. There could have been smaller tubs, but think of this, in the 1800s, there was no indoor plumbing. Any water brought in would have to have been brought in individually by bucketful, and then afterwards carried back out by bucket. Couple that with the fact that no historian has ever been able to prove that anyone named Rosie or Rose stayed and died in this hotel, and that this is a common current theme running among these old hotels, I don't think this one holds water, so to speak. Someone else did die in this hotel who is very important to the entire story. The Silver Queen herself, that is, the woman who modeled to do the Silver Queen, died in this hotel. This picture of the Silver Queen dates back to our experience in 2010. As I said, on this trip, I wasn't able to get into the lobby because of their hours, but I don't think that the picture has changed any. The portrait itself is made out of 3,261 silver dollars and 28 $20 gold pieces. And I've looked at other videos online who claim that they know who it was that modeled for it, and so far what I've seen, they're wrong. All you have to do, just go into the hotel and ask the owners. They'll tell you who it was. But we're a little bit ahead of ourselves. We're going to have to back up in order to analyze this story. This historic pic of Virginia City, probably taken around the 1930s, judging from the automobiles, shows that not much has changed since it was built. We can see Molinelli's, what is now the Silver Queen, right behind the Virginia Hotel there on the right. In 1954, the Reno Gazette reported that the Molinelli Hotel had been purchased by a guy from Fayette, Idaho. His name was Carroll Eaton. The purchase price, $45,000, was reported to be the largest sale of real property in Virginia City in a decade. His wife Allie, who preferred to go by her middle name of Jerry, was the model for the Silver Queen portrait. A newspaper article said that the couple had been residents of Virginia City for a year before the sale, but existing records show that he was married at least once before. Eaton was not the only one who had a vested interest in the Molinelli Hotel. A 1968 newspaper article says that a guy by the name of Pat Hart had opened a saloon called the Brass Rail Saloon in the Molinelli Hotel in 1942 and had kept it there until he relocated in 1950, probably when he found out the building was being put on the market. About the same time that Pat Hart was opening the Brass Rail Saloon inside of the Molinelli Hotel, Carroll Walter Eaton was filling out his draft registration for World War II. On the form, it lists a wife, Emma, which is why I say he was married at least once before, and he lists his place of employment as the Silver Dollar Beer Parlor. And this is not in Nevada, it's in Spokane, Washington, so he already has the idea of Silver Dollar stuck in his head before he comes to Virginia City. Then wife Jerry would become the Silver Queen model. Carroll, proud of the accomplishment, created a postcard, which was for sale in the saloon to promote their business. The back of the postcard has a description of their accomplishment. It touts the fact that they designed it. And we put the Silver Queen creation next to a blow-up of Jerry. You can see the comparison. Now, I would agree that some would say that Jerry just dyed her hair to look like an existing portrait. But there's more to this story than meets the Goldilocks. Jerry became the proverbial pillar of the community, heavily involved in PTA and the statewide bowling league. From what I saw, she actually did pretty good at it. In 1958, she was vice grand chair of the Oddfellows Rebecca Lodge in Virginia City, the oldest Rebecca Lodge in the United States. That means in 1959 she would have been Noble Grand, although I could find no newspaper articles saying that. So, could anyone say trigger objects? While Jerry was erecting her pillar in the community, Carroll was erecting his pillar someplace else, in the financial part. In the fall of 1963, Carroll told Jerry that he was leaving her for another woman. On September 21, 1963, the Reno Evening Gazette reported that Mrs. Jerry Eaton had been found dead in the manager's apartment at the Silver Queen.
That is the manager-owner's home office, separate building. That was where Jerry self-inflicted her gunshot wound.
The newspaper article said that she had died from a self-inflicted pistol wound believed to be a suicide, but the coroner would have to make a verdict. Although the newspaper article alluded to a suicide, the coroner did not make that determination. There is nothing on this death certificate that says anything about intent. The word suicide is not there. I've literally looked at thousands of these death certificates doing the other hotels, and I see the word suicide a lot. I see intentional act a lot. There's nothing on here to imply that. The coroner will try to determine the intent of the act by crime scene reconstruction or interviewing relatives or friends to determine the state of mind. With this event, there was no intent determined. Most of the people that look at this document, as well as the owners of the hotel and probably the family members, think that this was an accidental discharge. The owners believed that she was loading a firearm when she accidentally shot herself in the left side underneath the heart. The hotel owners also believe it was a shotgun, although the newspaper article clearly states that it was a pistol. The question remains, if she didn't intend to shoot herself and she was loading or cleaning the firearm, exactly who or what did she intend to shoot? The funeral services were held in the Lutheran Church in Virginia City. Just a few days short of 6 months later, Carroll Walter Eaton would take the bride, Ruby Mae Winterberg, making her Ruby Mae Eaton. Before marriage, Ruby had been a bank teller, maybe his. Immediately, he pulled all of the Silver Queen postcards featuring Jerry off of the market. He replaced Jerry with a picture of Ruby. In fact, 2 different postcards, one for the cowboy set and one for the business set. The postcards now said that he and Ruby had designed the Silver Queen portrait, which is highly unlikely because she didn't even move to Virginia City until 1959. If interested, you can buy these postcards off of eBay or download them off Pinterest. 2 months later, he applies to the Nevada Gaming Commission to give Ruby half of his slot share interest. By state law, that requires a background check. They put it out for deferral until the next meeting, and at that meeting she did get it. A little less than 2 years later, on January 23, 1966, Carroll dies while on vacation in Modesto. A month later, in February, she is temporarily licensed by Gaming Commission to operate all 75 machines. Ruby would spend the next 20 years of her life toiling as owner of the Silver Queen, passing in September of 1986. I'm sure that there have been others who have checked into the Silver Queen, registered, and not checked out, but for me, Jerry is the one that I think is stuck on the place. I think she's got a story to tell, and I don't think she's going to leave until she does. With night comes total darkness. In the room, the activity persists.
It's like some of these places are boarded up.
Checking the surveillance, the activity, cell sensor REM pods would carry on through the afternoon into the evening whether I was in the room or not. Far too much to display. During a ghost box session, a female voice very clearly says, "Here."
What?
A male voice says, "Thank you." Another voice says, "Scroll." Yeah, I don't know either. And at long last, it sounded like the spirit box called my name. They say you're not really a ghost hunter until the spirits know your name.
Yes? You call my name? It sounded like you said Stan. Did you say Stan? Female, was that you, Jerry?
4 a.m. the following morning, even with the cell sensor set on the normal setting, which means that they are less sensitive, the REM pods are still going off in the room and waking me up. No rest for the weary.
Well, I'm all packed up, getting ready to say goodbye to my fair room here. I'll say what, I sure did appreciate it. This was a very nice room.
So, here's the gist of it. You come in with meters, you get metered activity, and spend the rest of your life trying to figure out what caused it.
Got a lot of metered activity. Nothing that I considered to be important. I mean, the fan up here didn't start turning on its own or anything.
Steve in room 2 had no devices but had personal experiences. It seems like you're going to get one or the other, but not both. If you come, at least bring a camera. But without photographic evidence, you may find out what it's like to be Mr. Dowd talking about Harvey.
Well, anyway, I was walking down along the street, and I heard this voice saying, "Good evening, Mr. Dowd." Well, I turned around, and here was this big 6-foot rabbit leaning up against a lamppost. I thought nothing of that, because when you've lived in the town as long as I've lived in this one, you get used to the fact that everybody knows your name.
Don't be surprised if it knows your name, and for heaven's sakes, don't kick doors out. All you have to do is turn the doorknob to get out. As would be expected from this video, I gave the Silver Queen another rating of high and consistent. That I don't think is going to change. It hasn't changed in 10 years. I don't think it's going to change in the future.